Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyed, Chairperson, Senate Defense Committee, Excellency Ms. Pang, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of China and Pakistan, Ambassador Masood Khalid, former Ambassador of Pakistan to China, Chairman BOG, ISSI, DG ISSI, honorable guests, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. On behalf of Institute of Strategic Studies Islamabad, I welcome you all to this seminar titled Global Development Initiative, Catalyst for Development Cooperation. We are thankful to your gracious presence at this event today. Ladies and gentlemen, in September 2021, during the United Nations Assembly's 76th session, Chinese President Mr. Xi Jinping announced the Global Development Initiative in his speech titled Bolstering Confidence and Jointly Overcoming Difficulties to Build a Better World. In June 2022, Chinese President Xi Jinping chaired high-level dialogue on global development under the theme Foster Global Development, Partnership for New Era to jointly implement 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The GDI presents a pathway for accelerated implementation of Sustainable Development Goals 2030, while focusing on public-oriented development. Global Development Initiative aims to support the timely accomplishment of all 17 SDGs, revitalizing global development partnership, and promoting stronger, greener, and healthier global development. This initiative accelerates and harmonizes China's effort for development cooperation across the globe and strengthens its position as provider and promoter of new modalities and trends in development cooperation. GDI upholds the core principles, staying committed to development as priority, staying committed to people-centered approach, staying committed to benefits for all, to leave no country or no one behind, staying committed to innovation-driven development, staying committed to harmony between humans and nature, and staying committed to result-oriented actions. GDI aims to promote international cooperation in 8 priority areas that include poverty alleviation, food security, pandemic response and vaccines, financing for development, climate change and green development, industrialization, digital economy, and connectivity in digital era. As of October 2022, 68 countries have joined the group of Friends of GDI at the United Nations, and more than 100 international organizations and countries have expressed their support for this initiative. Today's seminar highlights the significance of this initiative and explores its salience within the context of advancing the SDGs 2030 agenda. For formal proceedings, ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, Ambassador Sohail Mahmood for his welcome remarks. Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, as you all know, has 37 years of experience as a diplomat. He has been Foreign Secretary of Pakistan before joining his current assignment as DG ISSI. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Talat. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished participants, Assalamu alaikum and a good morning. It is a real pleasure for us to welcome everyone to this ISSI seminar focused on the Global Development Initiative that aims to build on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development for stronger, greener, and healthier global development. On behalf of the Institute and on my behalf, I thank you all for your participation. We are privileged to have a distinguished panel of speakers, including eminent diplomat Ambassador Masood Khalid, noted academics Dr. Tahir Awan from ComSats and Dr. Sumaira Imran from NDU, our respectable friend Dr. Wang Shida from Tikrit in China joining us online, and Honorable Senator Mushahid Hussain Sahib, from whose wisdom we always continue to imbibe from. Thank you. Their wisdom Their knowledge and insights would be highly illuminating for us. We're also delighted to have Madame Pang Chunshui, Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of the People's Republic of China in Islamabad. Her contribution would further enrich the deliberations of this seminar. Distinguished participants, when it was launched in 2021, GDI was the most timely initiative to help the global community address a critical and growing deficit. The COVID-19 pandemic had already accentuated the severe challenges in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The achievements made over the past 10 years in poverty reduction were wiped out. The economic growth of emerging markets had slowed down. Food security crisis had deepened. The digital divide was growing, and the development divide between the North and the South was widening. Along with all this, the developing countries were facing a formidable challenge in that fair and equitable distribution of vaccines remained an arduous task as they scrambled to seek recovery from the pandemic. It is in this environment of despair that President Xi Jinping's vision showed the light. In his address at the 76th session of the UN General Assembly in September 2021, President Xi presented the Global Development Initiative with the aim to pool efforts to tackle the daunting challenges, promote post-COVID recovery, and seize opportunities for achieving common sustainable development and building a global development community. The initiative was based on some core concepts and principles, including prioritization of development, people-centered focus, leaving no country and no one behind, harmony between human and nature, innovation, global development partnership, action orientation, and synergy between the 2030 Agenda and other initiatives from BRI to Agenda 2063 of AU to NEPAD, and so on. The GDI's 8 priority areas included poverty alleviation, food security, pandemic response and vaccines, financing for development, climate change and green development, industrialization, digital economy, and connectivity. Pakistan was among the first countries to voice its strong support for this far-reaching initiative. Pakistan was also among the first countries to join the group of friends of GDI at the United Nations and has since actively contributed to its deliberations. It is a testament to the global appeal of GDI that as of October 2022, more than 100 countries and international organizations had expressed support for this initiative, and 68 countries had already joined the group of friends. Important work has been accomplished from this platform. Early on, the group of friends determined that 3 factors will be vital for implementation of GDI's goal and implementation of SDGs, that is, finance, technology, and capacity building. Practical cooperation and projects are now underway. An elaborate architecture is steadily shaping up to facilitate and fortify the delivery of concrete outcomes. In its pronouncements at the highest levels, Pakistan has consistently described GDI as a timely and critical initiative. Pakistan has stressed its gratification that China is leading this initiative, as China has the relevant experience, pertinent perspective, and right mix of resources. China successfully lifted more than 800 million people out of poverty. Its economic reforms process virtually created an economic miracle. And as the largest developing country, China understands the challenges and can help other developing countries with its own lessons learned. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is a pivotal vehicle in promoting the GDI's aims and advancing the achievement of SDGs. For Pakistan, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a flagship project of BRI, is already making a vital contribution. In a short span, CPEC has made a huge difference in the energy and infrastructure development in Pakistan and is now delving into several other key sectors. This transformational project remains crucial to Pakistan's continued progress and prosperity. Distinguished participants, at a time when geopolitical tensions are high and when the interlocking crises of food, fuel, and finance continue to plague the global landscape, when extreme poverty remains rampant and continues to grow, and the number of food insecure people keeps going up, the relevance and importance of initiatives like GDI can hardly be overemphasized. Furthermore, it is estimated that the cost of achieving the SDGs has increased from $2.3 trillion to $4.1 trillion per year. In this equation, GDI and its success remains indispensable for the developing world in particular and the global community at large. It is hoped that this initiative will be perceived in its right perspective and it continues to support the noble cause of implementation of Agenda 2030 and SDGs. With these initial thoughts and observations, I welcome everyone again and wish a very absorbing session ahead. I thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very candid remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request Ms. Pang, Charge d'Affaires of Chinese Embassy in Pakistan, for her remarks. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you. His Excellency Senator Mushahid Hossain Sayed, Chairman of Senate Defense Committee. His Excellency Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, Director ISSI. And His Excellency Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman BOG ISSI. And His Excellency Ambassador Masood Khalid, former ambassador to China. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. It is my pleasure. It is my immense pleasure and honor to be invited to attend this seminar organized by ISSI. I would like to express my gratitude to ISI for all the efforts they have made to hold this seminar. And I would also like to thank you all for your care and support for China and Pakistan relations. This year is the midterm review year of the UN 2030 agenda. On the occasion of the Sustainable Development Goals Summit to be held by UN, this seminar, I think, will, with Global Development Initiative as its theme, will help all walks of life in Pakistan to better understand the GDI. It will also provide inspiration for China and Pakistan to achieve sustainable development and high quality development of our friendship. These goals are in line with both the expectations of our two leaders and also the demands of the two peoples. Global development has now come to a critical juncture. Due to COVID, regional conflicts, and major power rivalry, food crisis, energy crisis, and debt crisis are emerging simultaneously. The world economy is struggling to recover, and developing countries are facing severe challenges in achieving the 2030 SDGs. Some countries have built small yards with high fences, keeping on slapping unilateral sanctions, deliberately creating division, and development issues are increasingly marginalized on the international agenda. How to answer the new questions of the times well and make the correct historical choices? This is a challenge for every country. The international community needs to unite and overcome difficulties together and to get the implementations of SDGs back on track. As the world's largest developing country, China is making unremitting efforts to this end and to inject new certainty into this world fraught with changes and chaos. In September 2021, bearing in mind the well-being of the entire humanity, President Xi Jinping proposed the GDI, aiming at building a global community of development. The GDI puts development first and the people at the center, and seeks to expedite the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. This initiative focuses on addressing unbalanced development among and within countries, centering around the implementation of 2030 Agenda, and is led by practical cooperation programs in key areas. It seeks better alignment with the UN and attaches importance to the role of the UN development system. It is dedicated to forging greater synergy with the development process of regions, sub-regions, and the country blocks, pooling and leveraging resources, and better serving the actual development needs of developing countries. It can be said that the proposal of GDI is a reprioritizing of global development and renewing commitments to SDGs, a revitalizing of global partnership, and a reactivating of international development cooperation. Firstly, we have built cooperation platforms. GDI extracts 8 key cooperation areas from the 17 major areas of SDGs, including poverty alleviation, food security, COVID-19 response and vaccines, development financing, climate change and green development, industrialization, digital economy, and connectivity. China has taken the lead in adopting 32 practical measures and released the first list of projects in the GDI project pool. The Group of Friends of GDI was officially established in January 2022 with nearly 70 members. 150 institutions from nearly 40 countries and regions are making joint preparations to establish a World Technical Vocational and Educational Training League. The China Pacific Island Countries Climate Action Cooperation Center has been established. China has engaged in co-production of COVID-19 vaccines with 13 countries, including 9 from the Group of Friends. More than 40,000 training opportunities have been provided to Group of Friends countries through over 1,000 capacity building programs. Secondly, we have scaled up inputs into GDI's implementation. The Global Development and South-South Cooperation Fund has been put in place to support GDI cooperation projects. China has participated actively in the replenishment of the International Development Association and the Global Environment Facility, and has officially launched the Phase 3 of the China FAO South-South Cooperation Trust Fund, contributing its share to increasing international development resources. The initiative has received support from over 100 countries and international organizations, implemented over 100 early harvest projects, and benefited over 60 developing countries. China has signed relevant bilateral cooperation documents with more than 20 countries. Thirdly, we have jointly tackled pressing challenges. COVID-19 has wiped out years of gains of poverty reduction, condemning over 150 million people to hunger. The GDI makes poverty reduction one of its priority areas. Cooperation projects have been tilted toward poverty reduction, food, health, and other lively areas. Institutions from 17 countries and regions became the first to join the International NGOs Network for Poverty Reduction Cooperation. In the face of a food crisis, the group of friends have stated their common proposition and spoken with a collective voice at the General Assembly on food security. So far this year, China has provided multiple batches of emergency food assistance to other developing countries in need, and recently pledged to provide additional emergency humanitarian assistance. Ladies and gentlemen, the core idea and implementation of GDI are under guidance of the concept Community with a Shared Future for Mankind, initiated by Chinese President Xi Jinping. China will strive to provide new opportunities and a new impetus for the development of all countries, especially developing countries with accomplishment of Chinese modernization. In pursuing a Chinese path toward modernization, we have always placed our own development in a bigger picture of human development, and have always combined the interest of the Chinese people with the common interest of people around the world. China will continue to play its role as an engine of world economy, input more resources for global development cooperation, share development experience with other countries, enhance the independent development capacity of developing countries, and have always combined the interests of the Chinese people with the common interest of people around the world. In the implementation of GDI, China is willing to enhance the leading role of the UN development system. The Global Development and South-South Cooperation Fund and the China UN Peace and Development Fund should be put to good use to mobilize and pool more resources. China is willing to enhance institutional building of the group of friends and identify coordinating countries for priority areas and regions. We should better link up the GDI with individual countries' development needs and with regional and sub-regional development strategies, and come up with new project proposals. We hoped that developed countries will fulfill their ODA commitments, take part in project cooperation under the GDI, and scale up inputs in developing countries, especially the least developed countries and the small island states. We hope that the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, and other international and regional development organizations will take an active part in GDI cooperation and provide more funding support for developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, China considers Pakistan a priority partner for cooperation in the GDI. Honorable President Dr. Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif have clearly expressed their strong support for the GDI. During Prime Minister's visit to China in November last year, our two countries issued a joint statement. China appreciates Pakistan's participation in a group of friends of GDI as one of the pioneer members, and is willing to further enhance cooperation with Pakistan. During the visit, the China International Development Cooperation Agency and the Planning Ministry of Pakistan signed a bilateral cooperation document on the implementation of the GDI. In September last year, China released a list of the first 50 projects of the GDI project pool, 3 of which are jointly implemented by China and the UNDP in Balochistan regarding poverty alleviation, livelihoods, and pandemic prevention. China and Pakistan stand at the forefront of cooperation in implementing GDI. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative proposed by President Xi Jinping, and also the 10th anniversary of the launch of CPEC. Earlier this month, Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Qin Gang made a very successful visit to Pakistan. which has added a new impetus into our bilateral relations. China stands ready to take this opportunity to work with Pakistan to promote the materialization of GDI and also GSI and GCI in Pakistan. China stands ready to expand cooperation with Pakistan in areas of industry, agriculture, mineral, science and technology, and information technology, so as to foster new growth drivers for CPEC. China stands ready to share more experience with Pakistan in governance and economic development to actively support and help Pakistan in accelerating industrialization and modernization, and to boost the all-round cooperation between our two countries. Looking ahead, China will work hand in hand with Pakistan on the path of implementing the 2030 agenda and jointly build a better community with a shared future. Thank you once again, and shukriya.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your very comprehensive remarks. I would now like to request Ambassador Masood Khalid for his keynote address. Ambassador Masood Khalid was the longest serving ambassador of Pakistan to China. During his time as ambassador in China, Ambassador Masood Khalid made invaluable contribution to strengthening Pakistan-China relations, as well as initiating the CPEC project. Sir, you have the floor, please.
Honorable Senator Mushahid Hussain Saab, Madam Pang Chunshui, Shadi Affairs of the Chinese Embassy, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman of the Board of Governors of ISSI, Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, DG ISSI, Dr. Talat Shabir, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Assalamu alaikum, and ni hao to my Chinese friends. And I'm also very happy to see one of our most respected and senior colleague, Ambassador Ashraf Jahangir Qazi, in our midst, who also served in China, and he is always a source of knowledge and wisdom for us. So thank you very much. Recently, the Chinese government has launched 3 important initiatives: the Global Development Initiative, or GDI, Global Security Initiative, GSI, and the Global Civilization Initiative, GCI, as the Chinese answer to the myriad of challenges faced by our world today. At a time of major transition in the international system, these initiatives present a win-win for all. Of the 3, the GDI was announced by President Xi Jinping in September 2021 at the UN General Assembly, with an aim to strengthen international cooperation, to prioritize development, tackle global health and economic challenges, and to promote post-pandemic economic recovery in line with UN SDGs. The GDI initiative seeks to promote a robust, greener, and balanced global development, and has already been pointed out that it has identified 8 priority areas, which I would not like to repeat, but I think these are important that our audience here, Pakistani audience here, focus on these areas, because they really present a very holistic menu, which is also germane to the socio-economic problems which are faced by Pakistan today. Periodically, GDI aims to create synergy with all relevant global, regional, or sub-regional development initiatives and cooperation processes, and aligns itself with national development strategies to achieve SDGs. Motivation for GDI was the adverse impact of COVID-19, particularly on the developing countries, which are ever struggling to break the shackles of poverty. And the last year figures says that nearly 150 million people were pushed into poverty due to the pandemic. And about 60% of the low-income countries were in debt distress or at high risk. And according to United Nations, 670 million people are still living in extreme poverty. And implementation of 17 SDGs is far behind the target. And what has just been mentioned, that there is also cost escalation in terms of fulfilling or meeting the SDGs, which is roughly, I think, now over $4 trillion. An official Chinese document explains that, and I quote, that COVID-19 has wiped off the achievements in global poverty reduction of the past 10 years, and developing countries face great economic and social difficulties. The achievement of the 2030 agenda faces severe challenges, and against this backdrop, China's GDI aims to put development issues at the center of global cooperation agenda, unquote. While cumulative factors, COVID-19 being the most significant, have impeded the realization of SDGs, all is not lost. Every challenge provides an opportunity also. Recognizing that our world finds itself in a paradoxical situation with challenges of poverty, climate change, disruption of supply chains, stagflation, mass migrations, etc. Yet at the same time, throwing up new opportunities where we find ourselves at the cusp of a new industrial revolution, from digitization, ease of communications, information overflow, and innovation of technologies. So GDI fulfills the need to take advantage of these positive trends to leapfrog development. One must appreciate the spirit behind GDI as it fosters multilateralism, inclusiveness, joint contribution, and shared benefits. It is basically a call to collective action to strengthen global partnership for accelerated implementation of the 2030 agenda. And the philosophy behind this initiative or other Chinese initiatives, which I mentioned earlier, or BRI, is best explained by a Chinese proverb. And Chinese leaders and Chinese intellectuals explain the policies and strategies quite often by quoting these idioms and proverbs, which have deep roots in Chinese history, intellectual history, and philosophy. And this proverb says, and I quote, "A single thread cannot make a cord, nor a single tree a forest," unquote. So this is the philosophy behind BRI and behind these initiatives, shared benefits. Now, China has taken concrete steps for GDI's implementation. Some of these steps have been outlined by Madam Pang. I would like to mention here that an interministerial coordination mechanism has been established, comprising more than 40 ministries and departments in China, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the lead. China International Development Cooperation Agency, or CITCA, which is like USAID or JICA, signed an MOU with UNIDO on 28 October 2021 to enhance cooperation to jointly help the developing countries achieve sustainable industrial development. In June 2022, President Xi Jinping chaired a high-level dialogue on GDI on the margins of the 14th BRICS Summit. China announced creating a Global Development and South-South Cooperation Fund, increasing input in the China UN Peace and Development Fund, and setting up a Global Development Promotion Center. And as the Shahjeh has mentioned, after this dialogue, China released a template of 32 measures which are being implemented in the context of GDI. China has also been working with relevant parties to develop cooperation networks in such areas as agriculture, education, COVID-19 response, and climate action. A technical vocational established an education training league is being established. She mentioned China Pacific Island Countries Climate Action Cooperation Center. China has engaged in co-production of vaccines with developing countries. More than 40,000 training opportunities have been provided to countries through over 1,000 capacity building programs. And I must mention here that Pakistan is one of a major beneficiary of these training programs and scholarships for our students. GDI has received the support of over 100 countries and many international organizations. As mentioned already, a group of friends has been established, and the founding members of GDI have the opportunity to take part in development strategy formulation, agenda setting, and direct planning. China is also considering, I read this, to hold a high-level event this year to accelerate GDI's agenda. Since United Nations is the main channel for international development cooperation and plays an important role in the implementation of SDGs, UN Secretary General has given his full support to GDI, and relevant UN development agencies are working on expanding avenues of cooperation. Pakistan has fully supported, as you know, the GDI, as it is in alignment with UN SDGs and purposes and principles of the UN Charter. All 8 priority areas are also priority areas for Pakistan. We were also among the first partner country to sign an MOU between SITCA and Ministry of Planning when Prime Minister visited, I think, last year. So Pakistan and China maintain close cooperation at the multilateral forum and at the United Nations, and will continue to collaborate to advance the objectives of GDI. Ladies and gentlemen, United Nations, which represents, I think now 193 countries, rich and poor, is at the center of multilateralism. 2030 agenda is a global roadmap for the future. However, in recent decades, UN has become a victim of big power politics and rendered ineffective, especially in discharging its central responsibility of maintaining peace and security. We have seen how interventionist policies have been pursued in flagrant violation of UN Charter. International governance structures created after Second World War are losing their effectiveness to cope with the emerging political, economic, and financial crises. Our world is riven with multiple challenges, and developing countries need financial support, debt restructuring, large concessional inflows, and FDIs to offset the adverse effects of a global poly crisis. Humanity has a shared future. Unilateralism, zero-sum mindset, and a winner-takes-it-all approach will inject more disorder in an already turbulent environment. Only by strengthening multilateralism and letting UN play its assigned role to preserve peace and security and promote development cooperation, we can salvage the situation. We are glad to see China emerge as a spokesman for fairness and equity in the international system. Its approach in support of dialogue, cooperation, collaboration, and coexistence, as opposed to conflict and confrontation, is a silver lining, especially for developing countries in the midst of growing polarization and strife in international system. Earlier, China's Belt and Road Initiative had emerged as an international public good. Now, GDI, along with two other initiatives of GSI and GCI, will help restore some sanity in arresting the negative drift and offer new platforms for dialogue and win-win partnerships. In conclusion, I would like to say that Pakistan, and I mean, it needs no reiteration. We are firm when we say this, that Pakistan and China are time-tested friends. We are constructively engaged in BRI and CPAC, which have brought tangible benefits to our people. Our cooperation and coordination on peace and development issues has become even more important now in the fast-changing regional and global environment. There is always a risk, just a word of caution, that initiatives like GDI, given their complexity and expanse and involving multiple actors, could suffer from inertia over time. But I am confident that with China in the lead, we will not allow this drift to happen. I also further suggest that in order to keep our local communities involved and to create more awareness about these important initiatives, we find similar groups of friends here in Pakistan, separate groups on these three initiatives for an interface between the Chinese side, civil society, media, and non-governmental bodies, not only to create public awareness, but also to formulate practical suggestions and input for the government, because this is important to keep all stakeholders who are involved in this initiative or who have to drive this initiative on board. This will also help our people study China's global governance development models and in political, security, economic, and civilizational domains, and study to see what relevance they have to our own national environment. I thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much for a very comprehensive keynote. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to the three panelists, academic panelists that we have with us today. And first is Dr. Tahir Mumtaz Awan. Dr. Tahir Mumtaz Awan is Assistant Professor and Director of China Study Center at Comstats University. He'll be speaking on the topic, Mobilizing International Cooperation on Development. Dr. Sahab, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Talat, and thank you very much, Chair and the Ambassador, the Charge Affairs, Ms. Phang Chun She, Ambassador Masood Khalid Saab. Thank you very much, sir. In fact, I would start with your kind permission, sir. I would start the same wording that these three initiatives, GDI, GSI, and GCI, what Ambassador Saab has just said, they are interlinked. And if we talk about the topic of concern that was given to me, in fact, international cooperation. So civilizations, they play an important role, and civilizations, they again have a common word, humanity, and diversity is always seen in those humanities or civilizations. So development, civilizations, humanities, and on a lower end people, they all are interconnected. They all have to work together to make things work. When this Global Development Initiative was announced or was pronounced by the President of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, at that time, China also announced poverty alleviation or the urban poverty alleviation in the same year. And they have achieved that target. They have achieved that objective of alleviation of urban poverty within the same year. So setting the targets and then again implementing those targets and showing others how to do. This is the way these initiatives or the method of these initiatives are being shown to the people. Ambassador Saab has pronounced a proverb, or I'll use the same proverb in a similar or more simpler meaning, that with one single flower, you cannot make the blossom, or you cannot make the spring. But we have to have some 100 flowers to you can say blossom and bring spring to the garden or bring spring to a community. So we have to, when this global development is being concerned, we have to think of not being a single flower, but being a 100 or being a collection of some flowers. And this again goes on. When I started my discussion, I said that showing others how to do. So this again goes to the Chinese side with a win-win cooperation strategy that they follow. And whenever we are saying win-win strategy, so BRI, CPEC, we are celebrating 10 years of both of these initiatives. These are the living examples. Not talking about what has happened, but we are at the phase 2 of this CPEC. And this phase 2 is focusing on people-to-people connections, people-to-people exchanges. And that is what GDI has said, that is what GSI has said, and that is what recently GCI is also saying. So in international cooperation, that is also in line with the SDGs. So see the SDG number 17, that say partnerships, global partnerships. So that global partnerships again aligns with those 3 initiatives, or specifically the first initiative, Global Development Initiative. We have to see where we are lacking and we have to make forward. We have to make a leap that may not have all those problems or all those issues that we faced in the recent past. We had the problem of COVID. We had that pandemic all over the world. Inflation is not Pakistan's problem only. Inflation is a global issue. So these issues cannot be removed from our boundaries, cannot be removed from our grounds. Similarly, we are also facing some political unrest. We are also facing some security issues in Pakistan also. We cannot deny that. But we have to see how to counter those problems and put our efforts more into that GDI or GSI or GCI. The first thing that maybe is more important regarding all of these 3 initiatives is respect for the diversity. We have to see that if we are collaborating with any other country, we are collaborating with China specifically on these CPEC initiatives, we have to respect the diversity of both the countries. They have to definitely respect our diversity, the diversity of our nation. And again, we have to understand how the Chinese work, and we have to find a moderate way. We have to find a central path which is easy for both of us to follow, which is feasible for both of us to follow, rather than making one person adopt the way that we are not used to. Maybe it will take decades to change ourselves. So diversity is the first thing which we have to consider, and we have to in fact respect and take into consideration in all of those initiatives. The common values for the humanity is the second thing, which is always considered in these kind of initiatives, these kind of global initiatives. We always talk about the FDI, we always talk about money, we always talk about financing, debt financing, or other kinds of money involvements. But we also cannot deny, or we cannot put aside the values, the social values, or the humanity, the values in the humanity. And we have to consider those as important consideration. Then robust international people-to-people exchanges and cooperation. So how we can a common statement that I often face from my Chinese friends is that right now, whatever is the situation of Pakistan is the same what China was in 90s. So a gap of 30 years, a gap of that 30 in terms of technology, the gap of 30 years in terms of our development, these 30 years cannot be neglected, cannot be minus from our situation. So we have to see what are our strengths. If we are talking about agriculture, if we are talking about infrastructure, if we are talking about our education system, yes, we do have to learn from those, and it'll take some time. Our pace is slow, we have to move faster, we have to work on it, but we have to see the common areas that are possible rather than exploring something or kind of scratching something that is maybe not in our domain, or not in our, that is not our strength. We have to see in agricultural sector what areas we are good at. For example, the cotton is one of the example, rice is one of the example in which we can learn from Chinese, and we can further cooperate. Citrus is our strength. Rather than we see that some new species should be brought and tested here, and then we'll see what are the results. We have to work on our strengths also. We have to work on what things we are good at. We are good managers. We are good business leaders. We accept this, that the soft skills are more better in Pakistan as compared to many other countries. But we are lacking towards the engineering side. We are lacking in the technology side. If we say that yes, we will do much better in artificial intelligence only, and we don't explore our softer side, soft skill side, sorry, then maybe we are not focusing on our strengths. Is another point which we have to see. We have to be a part of the group, even if we have some problems, if we have some issues with our bordering countries, we have some issues with other parts of the world, but still inclusivity, listening to others, and then again finding a better way, finding a better solution. That is what China has always adopted for. You will never hear any negative statement. You will not hear any confronting statement from Chinese government regarding any matter. And whenever they are giving a statement that is more researched statement, or that is more based on facts, we give statements and then we think about those statements, that rather this statement is right or wrong. I mean, I'm sorry to use these hard words, but we give statements without research, or less research. I'm sorry with this for these words again. So inclusivity is, again, it's not only playing your part, it is also bearing others, bearing the good or bad side of others also. So we have to bear some negative things also, if we want to play our role in these three initiatives, specifically in Global Development Initiative. In this GDIs, or in this international cooperation perspectives conclusion, I would say that Agenda 2030, as just mentioned, that we are lagging, or globally we are lagging behind because of COVID or because of some other reasons, is again a guideline, is again a roadmap which we have to follow. GDI has put its full effort, or you can say it has give us an alignment by which we can adopt a more easier or better way. So all those 8 priority areas, all those 17 SDGs, they all mean the same. If you open the website of United Nations, on the home page, you'll find collaboration or syncing with GDI's document also. So it is not something that is again going in a different direction or not going in the global direction, but it is again another alternative explanation of the SDGs. So what would we have to do, being a country, being a nation, being a civilization? What we have to do, or what our role should be, is to understand those objectives and try to follow all those guidelines that is being given. And I have actually mentioned this in another event also a few days ago, that last year, if Butham's University, I don't know anyone from Butham's is here, can be ranked at the top in the SDGs from all over Pakistan, then it means that we have the capabilities, we have the capacities to do all these or fulfill all those objectives, all those guidelines given in these SDGs and GDI. It is not only for the, thank you very much. It is, this must be for Butham's. Thank you very much. This does not mean that this GDI is only for the developed world. This GDI means that yes, SDGs is not for only for the development world, but this is all for all of us. So we should not put it aside and think that this GDI is only maybe for all those countries that can finance others. We maybe are financially having some problems these days, some unrest these days. So we cannot think about GDI. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Talat and ISSI.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mumtaz Awan, for your very nice presentation. I would now like to request Dr. Samira Imran for her presentation. Dr. Samira Imran is Assistant Professor of International Relations at Faculty of Contemporary Science Studies at National Defense University. And her presentation should focus on presenting pathways for accelerated implementation of SDG 2030 agenda. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Talat, and I pay my regards and thanks to the organizers of this invite, Dr. Masood, Ambassador Masood Khalid, as well as Ambassador Suhail Mahmood, Director General, and others. My presentation is going to take up a bottom-up approach. In fact, I'm going to first focus on the rationale of SDGs, first of all, and secondly, the vision of SDGs, followed by China-Pakistan cooperation in implementation of SDG goals through the GDI, that is the Global Development Initiative. First thing, the rationale of SDG, this is very important, and I'll begin with that. In fact, what I want to emphasize is that the pursuit of happiness is a natural condition, which is centered on a human-centric drive for security. And few societies can afford to ignore it. Peace is the cry of human heart, and it springs from mutual cooperation rather than by the desire for conflict. Having said that, I want to emphasize that as a responsible leading state of the international community, and by lieu of its stature as a major power, China holds a self-serving interest in the socio-economic development of its peripheral region. The Chinese Global Development Initiative calls for global emancipation, sustainability of development, and inclusivist approach to achieve global growth. And this serves Chinese interest as well as the interest of the peripheral region, as well as it serves the interest of the global community at large, based on the same rationale that I just suggested. Now, coming to the vision of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals present a multidimensional, holistic, and human-centric approach to global growth, which is equal and inclusivist. SDGs have enjoined upon member states binding actions which are incorporated in their national security agendas to allow them to fulfill their share of international obligations. And within this context, SDGs seek to eliminate discriminatory practices in the global patterns of developmental growth, which has resulted in the North-South divide. Now, I would like to emphasize a bit on what are those patterns of world inequality, which result in the global pattern of North-South divide. According to World Inequality Index, widening gulfs of inequality exist in wealth and income distribution within and between regions. Average incomes present sharp variations. 10% of the world's rich possess 76% of the global wealth. Of the remaining 24%, more than 50% is concentrated back in industrialized North, less than 2% in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Average income in Sub-Saharan Africa is 0.2 of the global average, while it is 0.5 in South and Southeast Asia. Latin America, East Asia, Russia, and Central Asia enjoy near to average global incomes, while in Europe, the ratio becomes double the global average. In North America, it is 3 times the global average. North Americans earn 6 to 10 times more than I earn in Pakistan, and people earn in Sub-Saharan Africa, South and Southeast Asia. What I want to emphasize is that discriminatory and exploitative practices, poor governance issues, absence of administrative skills, technological backlog, and climatic variations have compounded developing states' security agendas. Political violence, gender inequality, and ideological conflicts have their roots in acute poverty, energy shortfall, health hazards, and financial debts. Under the UN system, the major states' technological advancement and financial capacity can play a role in the progress of those who are left behind. Additional responsibilities underlie mutual cooperation between states to synergize their strategies. In this context, 2 problems have erupted. 1, lack of clarity on the role, responsibility, and obligation of the major powers to implement SDGs. And second, specification of accelerated pathways for a program of collective action to implement the vision of global growth. China's Global Development Initiative is also referred to as Xi's Agenda of Responsible Development of Global Growth. It is a major initiative for global development. A club of states called Group of Friends have joined the Chinese initiative, including Pakistan. To boost mutual cooperation, the Chinese initiative has provided for the following aspects for joint collaboration. 1, the Global Development and South-South Cooperation Fund, China UN Peace and Development Fund, and Global Development Promotion Center. Within this context, Pakistan seeks to benefit from Chinese initiative. To implement the vision of SDGs, China can create a synergy of collective vision for Sino-Pakistan mutual cooperation. Emerging technologies of China can play a big role in China-Pakistan cooperation to implement and realize the agenda of SDGs 2030 goals. Main problems in Pakistan relate to cross-border insurgency, international interference, and climatic variations, which have reversed GDP's growth rate in Pakistan. Under the rubric of the Global Development Initiative, the first pathway, which I want to highlight and suggest, for China-Pakistan joint collaboration should target poverty alleviation. With first SDG set at a global zero by 2030, poverty alleviation has acquired a profound significance in the national security agenda of states. 55% of Pakistan's population is living below the poverty line. To restore the credibility of human dignity, poverty alleviation against all forms is the integral and should be the integral approach. Secondly, poverty alleviation is integrally interlinked with provision of food security. In this regard, conduction of a country-specific need assessment survey can specify areas of China-Pakistan agricultural cooperation. Pakistan needs low credit finance for distribution as investment loans to increase its agricultural output. New technologies in the field of agriculture, such as climate resilient seeds, techniques of low water consumption, methods of mechanized farming, early warning systems, and effective use of efficient pesticides can yield high crop yields with increased nutritive value as the targeted areas for mutual cooperation. Advanced methods of quality production can provide for domestic requirements and generate surplus for international exports. Food security linked to high income generation can alleviate the problem of poverty in Pakistan. Thirdly, food security in turn pays dividends for health, education, and in turn, economic security of a state. Health security indicators portray a dismal picture in case of Pakistan. On the Global Hunger Index 2022, Pakistan ranks 99th out of 121 states. Acute poverty, unawareness of healthy lifestyles, loss of food stock caused by floods, and natural calamities underlie problems of health insecurity. According to Global Hunger Index and World Food Program, 4 indicators of health are there. First is child mortality. Pakistan has a fairer high share of 45% under 5 years of age, falling in this category. Undernourishment and insufficient caloric intake is 20.5%. Stunted growth is 44% under 5 years of age. Pakistan has the highest number of stunted children after India and Nigeria. Child waste during pregnancies falls 15%. Overweight is 19.5 as a serious health hazard. Vitamin deficiencies constitute 53.7%, and anemic children constitute 61% in the state. China can synergize in the field of health improvement, sharing of advanced technologies, investment in the health and medical care centers. Health awareness can improve physical health and mental abilities of many in Pakistan. Moreover, and more significant is the energy shortfall in the state. Energy shortfall has sent shockwaves from Europe to Asia in the backdrop of the Ukrainian crisis. However, it is more pronounced in case of Pakistan. Pakistan can create, along with China, synergies in capacity building for low carbon emission transition by capacity building for solar panel generation technology and use of the nuclear energy. Pakistan has relied on imported energy resources like gas and oil. Fueled oil prices derailment in fueled like the high oil prices, derailment in LNG supplies have created increased challenges to support effective operations of power plants in Pakistan. Nuclear, solar, wind and hydropower production can help in overcoming the crisis of energy in Pakistan. Transition to low carbon emissions will prevent soil erosion, landsliding, moving of glaciers, and unpredicted monsoon catch and snowfalls. Moreover, investment in information technology, vocational training, skilled manpower, and education can provide for sustainability in development. Self-reliance and realization of sustainable development goals in China's peripheral region. Vocational and mechanical training skills can quell unrest, generating skilled manpower of the 60% youth of Pakistan. Under the GDI, that is the Global Development Initiative, China can allocate funds for feasibility studies to construct dams and provide for early warning systems to grant relief against flood destructions in Pakistan. To mitigate climate challenge, regional and global inclusivist approach must entail adaptation strategies for afforestation and deforestation schemes in Pakistan. Sino-Pakistan Mutual Cooperation under GDI's technological, financial, and training resources can speedify the pathways to achieve sustainable development goals. Economic growth built on affordable and clean energy, joint industrial production, IT transfers, and innovation can reduce national, regional, and global inequalities as a solid foundation of China-Pakistan long-lasting partnership to achieve sustainable, inclusivist, equal, and balanced global growth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Smita Imran, for your presentation and many pragmatic recommendations that you gave in your presentation. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we have our very dear friend, Dr. Wang Shida from China. Before I request, I just introduce Dr. Shida is Deputy Director of Institute of South Asian Studies, China's Institute of Contemporary International Relations, commonly known as KICR. Known expert on South Asia, Dr. Shida has extensively contributed to the publications besides co-authoring 5 books. Dr. Shida will be speaking on climate change and green development. Dr. Shida, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Talat, and good morning, friends in Islamabad, Ambassador Sophia Mohammed, Ms. Peng Chunxue, Ambassador Masood Khalid, Ms. Romina Khurshid, Senator Mujahid Hussain, as well as Ambassador Khalid Mohammed. It's quite an honor to have this kind of opportunity to exchange views, points with friends in Islamabad, especially old friends. We all know that on September 21st, 2021, President Xi Jinping attended the general debate of 67th session of the United States General Assembly and delivered a very important speech. And in that important speech, the GDI was formally put forward. And just now, I think several friends, either Ms. Peng Chunxue or friends in Islamabad already make it quite clear the essence of the GDI. In my opinion, I think there are at least 6 points in terms of essence of GDI. First is adhere to the priority of development. Second is to adhere to people-centered approach. Third, adhere to inclusiveness and benefit for all. Fourth, insist on innovation drive. Fifth, adhere to the harmonious coexistence of man and nature. Last but not least, that is adhere to action orientation. In my humble opinion, I think to put forward or to advance the essence of GDI, I think there are at least 6 possible paths or principles of GDI that need our close attention. First and foremost is focus on the center. That means adhere to the development priority and closely follow the central task of implementing 2030 SDG. Second principle or policy that might be the project lead. That means to adhere to action orientation, promote policy dialogue, and experience sharing, as well as capacity building and practical cooperation. The third principle or path that might be participation of all parties. I think with the United Nations as a very important partner and the friends group countries of JDI as a main body, to create cooperation samples and drive others to participate. The fourth principle might be increase investment. That means make good use of the Global Development and South-South Cooperation Fund, as well as China United Nations Peace and Development Fund, and gather more resources, encourage all parties to participate in cooperation projects in areas of common interest. The fifth principle might be the comprehensive promotion. That means strengthen cooperation in various fields and comprehensively serve the implementation of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals of 2030 Agenda of United Nations. Last but not least part, that means focus on the key areas or key points, while promoting the JDI in all-round way. Focus still the current urgent challenges and jointly address prominent issues such as food security, poverty reduction, and security, industrial and supply chain disorder. I think that is maybe possible. That might be the principles of the pathway of the JDI. From the perspective of implementation of JDI, I think a very important issue is climate change and green development. In my humble opinion, I think in order to correctly cope with the climate change and realize the goal of green development, I think three points that need our close attention. The first is to accelerate the green transformation of the development model. That means accelerate the adjustment and optimization of industrial structure, energy structure, transportation structure, etc. Implement a comprehensive conservation strategy, promote the conservation and the intensive use of various resources, and accelerate the establishment of a waste recycling system. Improve fiscal and taxation, finance, investment, price policies, and standard system that support green development. Develop green and low carbon industries, advocate green consumption, and promote the formation of a green low carbon production method as well as lifestyles. The second point that I want to mention is to improve the diversity, stability, and sustainability of the ecosystem. That include implement major projects for biodiversity conservation, scientifically carry out large-scale land greening actions, and establish a mechanism for realizing the value of ecological product and improve the ecological protection compensation systems. Last but not least, point that need our attention, that is actively and strategically promote carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Based on the energy and resource endowment of each country, implement the carbon peak action in a planned and step-by-step manner. Improve the regulation of total energy consumption and intensity. Focus on controlling fossil energy consumption and gradually shift to a dual control system for quantity and intensity of carbon emissions. Deeply promote the energy revolution. Accelerate the planning and construction of a new energy system. Coordinate hydropower development and ecological protection. Actively, safely, and orderly develop nuclear power. Improve carbon emission statistics and accounting system. And improve the carbon emission rights market trading system. I think that is might be the three important points in perspective of climate change and green development. Here is my main viewpoint on GDI, and I thanks for your patience. Thanks all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wang Shida, for your presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to request today's chief guest, Senator Mushahid Hussain, for his speech. Senator Mushahid Hussain is authority on international political and strategic issues and has written extensively in reputed publications across the world. Senator Mushahid Hussain has served as a Minister for Information and Chairman of Foreign Relations Committee in Pakistan Senate. Currently, he serves as Chairperson of Senate Defense Committee. Sir, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Talat Shabir Saab. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here. Your Excellency, Madam Pang, the Acting Ambassador of China, the Chairman of the Board, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, then the Director General of the Institute, Ambassador and former Foreign Secretary Suhail Mahmood Saab, and Masood Khalid Saab, and other distinguished friends, ladies and gentlemen. This initiative has come at a very superb timing, because the world is being transformed. As you can feel, the transformation is there and turmoil is also there. So it's come in a period of change where China is showing leadership on issues. And it came when the COVID pandemic was coming to an end, and in that COVID pandemic, China also showed leadership. While some other countries talked of vaccine nationalism or vaccine exclusivity, China was the first to share its technology, its know-how, its assistance with the countries of the global south as well as the global north. When we talk of the Global Defense Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, and the Global Civilization Initiative, there are certain commonalities in that. First is the universality of these initiatives. They're not confined to one part, one region. There's a universal aspect to that. Then there is an element of inclusivity in that. And above all, there's an element of harmony. Because whether we talk of the Global Development Initiative, the principles behind that, talking of harmony with nature, people-centered development, innovation-driven initiatives, or Global Security Initiative, where there's an element of indivisible security. And security that is not that one security is the expense of other security. Or now the Global Civilization Initiative, which also talks of harmony of civilizations and connectivity. And I remember the speech of President Xi Jinping in May 2019 at the conference on the dialogue among civilizations in Beijing, which I was present. And there he said that the Chinese civilization has been enriched by other civilizations. And he mentioned Buddhism, he mentioned the Islamic civilization, and he also mentioned China's interactions with the West. And this was his famous speech. And now the Global Civilization Initiative also is in that element. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a very brief global context to what we are discussing. And I'd just like to mention some of the statements made by leaders, which shows how the world is being transformed. And that, I think, is important to understand. President Biden has said that this is going to be the decisive decade. President Putin has said this is the most dangerous decade. President Xi Jinping has said that we are witnessing changes in which we have not seen in a century. Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, recently wrote an article in the Foreign Affairs magazine in the US. And he said the world is witnessing an epochal tectonic change. And I think the most important statement came from President Macron of France when he addressed French ambassadors in Paris last year. I think that sums up the nature of this historic transformation. And I quote, he said, 300 years of Western hegemony is coming to an end. So what we are witnessing is the shift in the global balance of economic and political power away from the West to the East. जो अल्लामा इकबाल ने कहा था, देख मशरिक से उभरते हुए सूरज को देख, गरा ख्वाब चीनी संभलने लगे, हिमालय के चश्मे उबलने लगे, गया दौर सरमायादारी गया, तमाशा दिखा के मदारी गया. So that transformation which Allama Iqbal had predicted 90 years ago, the rise of Asia and the rise of China, it's amazing. But there's also, I want to tell the audience that there's a Chinese context to this. And two aspects I'd just like to briefly mention that. One is China's, what I call the strategic culture of China, based on China's worldview and values. That is behind whether it's the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, or the Global Civilization Initiative. And in this strategic culture, there are 3-4 components that are very, very important historically from the Chinese experience. One, of course, is the Silk Road. President Xi Jinping hosted last week the first China Central Asia Summit in Xi'an. And Central Asia, we had countries from Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. And they developed a special blueprint for cooperation in the region. And why Xi'an? Because Xi'an is where the origin of the 2,000-year-old Silk Road. That's where it began historically. So Silk Road is all about connectivity via commerce and culture. And it is no accident that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had said 1400 years ago, seek knowledge even if you have to go to China. So even almost 2 centuries ago, 2 millennia ago, China was an advanced civilization from which the world was benefiting. And that was a role model. So today, when we talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, it is reviving the Silk Road in the modern way, whether it's also the Maritime Silk Road. Then the second aspect, which is very important, is the Great Wall of China. It sums up. It's a very protective, defensive structure to ward off against external aggression. So China's values and worldview is based on a peaceful world, not an aggressive world, where China seeks to defend itself, protect itself from outside intruders. And that's part of China's strategic culture, as I call it. And then there's another element. We in Pakistan, we always talk of the long march on every little thing. The long march is 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, 100 kilometers. China had the long march under Chairman Mao for 1 year, 34, 35, 6,000 kilometers. 100,000 people started off, 20,000 people were finally survived the long march when they settled in the caves of Yunnan, which shows China's patience, China's perseverance, and China's strategy that never give up. They stay steadfast, despite the odds. And one other part of what I call China's strategic culture, and that's very important to understand, is the century of humiliation, which is mentioned also in the books of President Xi Jinping. From 1840, when the Opium War started, imposed by the West, because they wanted to export this opium and impose opium on the Chinese people. Till 1949, when the liberation of China took place on 1st October, and Chairman Mao announced in the Tiananmen Square, the Chinese nation has stood up on 1st October 49. And those of you who have been to Shanghai, they go to museums, you will see there were 4 enclaves: the British enclave, the American enclave, the German enclave, the French enclave, which had their own courts, which they had their own administration of these foreigners, dominating Shanghai. And the clubs had said, Chinese and dogs not allowed. This was the situation. So that transformation has taken place. And so that is at the heart, at the root of China's worldview, which is based on collectivity and a peaceful quest for a better tomorrow. And the second component of that is the Chinese historic experience, which is alluded to by Madam Pang also and others, the reform and opening up under Deng Xiaoping, 1978-79. And that has the ingredients of the Chinese success story in the 20th and the 21st century. And what are those ingredients that we can at least learn from or understand? Number one, the quality of leadership. That is extremely important. Leadership which has some of the best and the brightest people who are in the hems of the leadership in the Communist Party of China. They're not there because of any famous daddies or rich daddies or anybody or lineage, based on meritocracy, on education, on service to the people. So the quality of leadership is number one. And you could see it for Chairman Mao or Premier Zhou Enlai or Marshal Chu, the first generation of Deng Xiaoping and Liu Shaoqi. And now President Xi Jinping or Li Qiang or Wang Yi or other leaders, or Qin Gang, the foreign minister who just came. The second one is course correction. The ability to do a course correction. They realized there was a mistake, that they were on the wrong course, the Cultural Revolution and after, and Deng Xiaoping changed that course, the course correction. Other countries do also. President Nixon did the course correction on American foreign policy when he went to China through Pakistan. The third element in that is, I think, extremely important, a humility, an ability to learn from others for China. And I want to remind you that I was reading this book by the former Vice Premier of China, Li Lanqing. The book will be there, Breaking Through, it's called. He was one of the persons who was a close aide of Deng Xiaoping in reform. Then he was a technocrat, then he became Vice Premier and he retired. And he says that when the reform and opening up began, Deng Xiaoping said he sent the first group of people to the Western countries for education. They went to American universities, British universities, other places. And then they chose 3 countries that learned from these 3 countries. One was Singapore, one was Philippines, and one was Pakistan, 1980, 81. And he says he was sent to Pakistan. So he said, I came to Pakistan in 1980, 81. And he says, I was impressed. Pakistan was so developed, so advanced. He says, the Shanghai port was so backward as compared to the Karachi port, which was then producing 26 million tons of cargo, going back and forth. And he says, the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank asked the Chinese to prepare that you can now get loans from us, but you have to prepare feasibility reports. He said, we didn't know how to make feasibilities. So we learned from from Pakistani friends. And he says the Pakistani bureaucracy, by the way, this is longer 40 years ago, was outstanding. And I think that is then a very important experience, the ability to learn from others. Deng Xiaoping, the leader of China, the world's largest country, biggest population, chose the one country to visit personally was Singapore. That he wanted to learn from Singapore, a small island of 4 or 5 million, but predominantly Chinese. Then how has Singapore achieved progress without any resources, without any oil? And these are, when he met them, Lee Kuan Yew writes in his book, From Third World to First World, that I told Deng Xiaoping that we are the descendants of Chinese coolies who came from, Guangdong province, who came from Xiamen, who came from others, who British had brought for plantations and from other things, building railway tracks. And he said, the important thing is empower your people so they can blossom, their talents can blossom. And the final aspect in why China's success story is a peaceful foreign policy. A foreign policy based on peace, because China is the only country in human history which has risen and become a great power without conquest, without invasion, without occupation, without colonization. And that is unique. And I just want to mention in this regard a very famous conversation between President Trump and President Carter. This was April 2018. Trump was president, and Carter mentions this in his, every Sunday he gives a talk or a lecture at his Sunday church congregation in Plains, Georgia. He's a very religious man. And he says, he told the congregation in April 2018, this is part of, you can see it in the Google also. Last week, I got a call from President Trump. And President Trump asks Carter, Mr. President, how do we handle China? China is forging ahead and they're coming ahead of us. How do we combat? How we contain? He says, look here, Mr. President, I hosted Deng Xiaoping in 1979 at the White House. And he came on that famous visit, wearing a Stetson hat, Western hat and everything. He says, since that period, China has been focusing on peaceful development, while America has been at war, fighting wars. All through these 40 years, China has been at peace. That is the difference. And he mentioned also, after 9/11, from 2001 to 2021, America spent $6.5 trillion in the so-called war on terror, according to the Brown University study of the Institute of Study of Conflict. This is in the internet also. The study came out in November last year, and it's documented. The total cost of the wars in Fatah, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, $6.5 trillion. In the same period, China was investing $4 trillion in 3,000 projects all over the world. Investment, trade, and that is why out of 193 countries of the United Nations, 130 countries have more trade with China than they have with the United States, from the Solomon Islands to Saudi Arabia. So it is in this context that China has played that historic role, I think. We are very fortunate and we want to thank China for that. The rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. For last 40 years, this conflict was damaging not just these two great Muslim countries, but the Muslim world at large because of proxy conflict, whether it's Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, everywhere this was. Thankfully, thanks to China's role as a bridge builder, as a global leader now in climate change also. So, and often recently, and I'd like to conclude on that, people ask me questions, what should we be doing? What side should we be there? Who should be? Is it the US versus China and so forth? What should we balance, as they said? Should we be on this side or that? And I always say that the relationship with China is strategic. The relationship with the United States is tactical. By strategic, I mean it is an all-weather partnership, irrespective of changes in the world, in the region, in China, or in Pakistan. There is a steadfast commitment. The US relationship is tactical because it is linked with geopolitical situations. Cold War, yes, they need us. Opening to China, they need us. Afghan war, they need us. War on terror, they need us. And when the need is over, the situation changes, off they go, bye-bye. That is the difference. And what China brings through the table, because it's also, international relations is not just that we like each other or whatever. There has to be a compatibility of national interests that each other. China is Pakistan's firm, reliable global partner. Globally, where Pakistan may not be represented, UN Security Council, Nuclear Suppliers Group, G20, FATF, China is Pakistan's voice. China protects and promotes Pakistan's interests. That is a very key thing. Jokingly, I say, China provides us with diplomatic air cover because, on these issues. Then the other aspect is that on all core interests of Pakistan in defense, development, and diplomacy, China is always there for us. No other country is there in such absolute terms. See, last week, G20 in occupied Kashmir, China was the first to announce we are not going there. They made a public announcement with clarity. As a principled position, it's disputed territory. We do not accept occupied Kashmir as part of India, and we will follow the UN Charter and the UN resolutions. Other countries also came, and we are grateful to Indonesia, I think not Indonesia, Turkey, Turkey, and also Egypt and Oman. They were specially invited also. Saudi Arabia, yes. And Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, Oman, they also, because they were special invitees also, Egypt and Oman. They stood by us also. But China was the first to proclaim it. And when it comes to regional hegemony, Indian threat, China is always there for us. So somebody asked me, which side are you on? I said, Pakistan is on the right side of history. And the right side of history is development, Asian century, cooperation, and connectivity. Not containment, not conflict, not confrontation. We reject any notion of a new Cold War. And we reject any notion that says there's a threat from China or containment of China. And now this talk of expanding NATO into Asia is not acceptable for us. They are having an office being opened now in Tokyo of NATO. NATO is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And now NATO says there's a threat from China. I talked to the European ambassadors recently. I said, last time I checked on the map, China is 3,000 miles away from the North Atlantic. What is the threat of China? China is in Asia. You're talking of North Atlantic. You talk of threat from Iceland, maybe from Romania or other place, Europe or whatever, or Canada or whatever, but North Atlantic, and now you're talking of Asia Pacific. So this kind of Cold War mentality, zero-sum game mentality will not work. And I hope that they see reason also, people, policymakers in the West, because this kind of mindset based on their military industrial complex that seeks to demonize, destabilize through disinformation, so-called enemies, it's not something which the Asian countries want. And that is why Pakistan is an enthusiastic partner of the Belt and Road Initiative, along with other countries, along with 145 other countries, along with the Middle East, along with Central Asia, along with the region. So I think that we are very fortunate that we have a close partnership with China. It's based, and China knows that Pakistan too is one country which stands by all core interests of China, unreservedly. Whether it's Taiwan, Xinjiang, Tibet, South China Sea, Hong Kong, or stability, unity, and territorial integrity of China. We are there for China, just as China is there for us. So let us all build the 21st century, the Asian century together as partners, as part of the Global Development Initiative, Global Security Initiative, Global Civilization Initiative, a better tomorrow, a peaceful tomorrow, a prosperous tomorrow, without any overlords and without any underdogs. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much, sir, for your speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we are hard pressed on time, but we'll just open the floor very briefly. And I would like very brief comment or question. Sir. We are honored with the presence of Vice Chancellor Karakoram University, Ataullah Shah Sahab. He especially joined us from Gilgit.
Thank you very much, sir. I think it has been a wonderful company of learned people. We have very close cooperation with the Chinese government, Chinese embassy, and they have been giving a lot of scholarships to the students. I think this GDI is a transformed version of the SDGs. I would say that it is more focused on the regional development and inclusivity. And there is a need. I was in Lanzhou last week, Lanzhou University in the Belt and Road Forum, and I could see that there are about 40,000 students now in China, out of which 10,000 in graduate programs. This is a very large number for Pakistan. So this is, it's increased to 35,000 or
That's
40,000.
very good news, Vice
Soon
Chancellor
after
Saab.
the COVID.
Excellent, sir.
And 10,000 around are in the graduate programs. I think there is, besides the infrastructure and the energy corridors, we need to strengthen the knowledge and research corridor and the technology corridor. And these are the two areas where I think the Chinese universities and Chinese government is very open to collaborate with us. So all the academia and the researchers, they have to play. We are partners with around 25 universities in China now, and we are exchanging our faculty and students. And I think that is the way to create the understanding, better understanding between the two nations and connectivity. So as a Vice Chancellor, I look forward for a greater initiative, and I see that GDI will have a far-reaching impact in the development of this region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, please. Thank you very much, sir. Sir. Thank you, sir. GG.
Thank you. This is Salahuddin Chaudhry from the Pakistan Foreign Service, once upon a time, stating, what is in a name that you call by any other name smells as sweet? What is in a name that which you call by any other name smells as sweet? Some 4 centuries ago, very famous playwright and bard and poetic justice man said this, all right? And he was trying to describe a rose flower, right? Call it rose, call it dose, call it both, doesn't matter. The fragrance remains the same. So one stem flower in a bouquet also make a difference. One sampling for a forest also makes a difference. That is the key, Senator Mushahid Hussain Saab, you really so eloquently describe in your phrases like peace and harmony. But I would add, peace, harmony, they come from the understanding, the human understanding, that is built on love, friendship, and trust. And this is where China comes in. China says, malice to none, friendship to all. This is a policy, laid down policy. And I'm happy, Chargé Pang Xi mentioned Pakistan is a priority partner. That shows the amount of trust China has for Pakistan. And this is where, again, I say hats off to Mr. Mushahid Hussain. You said, this is the Asian century. And we can make it. And by partnership, by love, friendship, understanding with people and countries like China. China is one country which is so dear to us. We should not forget that. This is my comment, open to all panelists, and I'll be very grateful. They can also dilate on it a little bit, although we are pressed for time. Thank you.
So thank you very much, sir. One last comment. We are running short time.
Thank you very much. My name is Munir Ahmed, and this is really wonderful to listen like another round of wonderful lessons from China and all about the Chinese friendship. But I don't know, Mushahid Saab, Senator Saab, would you like to comment on it? Like when we will start implementing what we learn from China, like for decades, like 2-3 decades, China has been financially empowering their people. And we are still giving subsidies to different sectors, even to influential. Like, don't you think like China, like, prepared COVID vaccine, and now they should invent some performance vaccine for Pakistan?
I think that Munir Saab, thank you very much. And tomorrow, Mr. Munir is holding, he's a very famous developmental expert, and tomorrow he's hosting a webinar on China for the new regional security, connectivity, and trade paradigm, to which I'm also invited. So good luck tomorrow on that. There are two words which we always use when we regularly from our officialdom, and I think if those are implemented, things will happen. One is called one window operation. CPEC. I was having dinner with the mayor of Shanghai about 5 years ago. And I asked him, I said, if hypothetically, I want to establish a company and register in Shanghai, what will be the requirement? And there are 20,000 plus foreign companies registered in Shanghai. He says, Excellency, if your papers are in order, 48 hours, and you can also open a bank account. In Pakistan, God forbid if a Chinese investor comes. I'll just give an example. I was with the deputy ambassador, her counterpart those days, Zhao Lijian. He took me to the chairman of Power China. Power China, chairman in China is like the head of General Motors in America. Very powerful, very important. And the sport cast him and everything. I said, I knew they had some problems, and it was a very formal meeting. And I said, what are your problems, Mr. Chairman? He said, I don't want to discuss with you because you are very busy and there are some issues. They're very polite, he didn't want. I said, no, I'm not very busy. He said, no, but now this is 11 o'clock. You have to go for lunch also. We have some. I said, no, I'll skip lunch. I want to know what is your problem. He said, Excellency, I need a shoulder to cry upon. And then he mentioned, he went to PM Secretariat, he went to WAPDA, he went to Water and Power, he went to NEPRA, and one like a football, they do it. I think this, if you can do this one window, UAE has done it, there's no rocket science. China has done it. China is open to foreign investment in a big way, in the most receptive environment. So number one. The other thing is, we also use the term, there are, mashallah, about, I think, 20,000 Chinese in 120 different projects. foolproof security. If you cannot provide security for CPEC projects or for our Chinese friends or Chinese projects or people working here, and if even professors at Karachi University are not safe, who are educating us. Imagine if Pakistani professors teaching in Beijing University or Tsinghua University are killed by terrorists in Beijing. How would you feel? Would anybody come here? Thank God we have 40,000 students studying in China. So I think these are, just do these two things, everything will be there. The people of Pakistan, mashallah, are very dynamic. They have fire in their belly. They excel. There are 10 million Pakistani diaspora abroad, and they're doing very well outside Pakistan. And so they can deliver here if you give the right environment, enabling environment for that. And that applies to the Pakistan-China interaction. And about CPEC, I'd just like to mention, CPEC came 10 years ago at a time when no country in the world, Western or Muslim, was willing to invest a cent in Pakistan. And China, through President Xi Jinping, they showed how a sincere friend they are. It was a vote of confidence in Pakistan and its people, and it gave a new hope. And I'll just give you two examples very briefly. One, there was this dream for last 30 years about Thar coal. Oh, we have the largest coal reserves. There was just a mirage. It was just a dream. Today, the coal is being mined, and that mined coal is generating electricity, and electricity is going to the national grid thanks to CPEC. And secondly, Gwadar Port. And you can ask his senior colleague, Riaz Khokar. He was the ambassador to China when General Musharraf went there in 2002. And Zhu Rongji was the prime minister. He said, we need this project, China to help us in Gwadar. He said, Excellency, we have plans for next 2-3 years, the Chinese prime minister said. He said, no, as a friend, we need your help. He said, okay, if that's the priority. Riaz Khokar says within 6 weeks, they had the plans ready and said, for Pakistan, a special case. Although they have a 5-year plan, and they did it. 2003 to 2007, it was ready. And then the Chinese said, okay, we built the port for you. Okay, take it now, please. We are leaving. And we gave it to the Ports of Singapore Authority, who did damn all. And then we begged China, please take it over. And in March 2013, we have taken that over. And today that, inshallah, for the future, this is going to be the main port for regional connectivity with Central Asia, with Xinjiang, and with Afghanistan. And Afghan transit trade is through that area. So, so dreams can become realities if you have the vision and the will to implement that vision. And I think the Chinese follow what I think the Nike slogan is, just do it. And that's the approach we should be.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Interesting discussion can go on and on. We have Friday prayers just coming. So I would like to request Chairman BOG, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, for his concluding remarks. So you have the floor, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Guest, Senator Musaid Hussain Sayyid, Chairperson, Senate Defense Committee. Madam Wang, Shagird Affair of the Chinese Embassy in Pakistan. Our keynote speaker, Ambassador Masood Khalid, Director General ISSI, Ambassador Sohail Mahmood, who organized this event. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we know that after the end of World War II, a new world order was ushered in, which reflected the priorities, interests of the victor countries. But the main feature of that was multilateralism. And also, in parallel to the United Nations, the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank, IMF, were established. But as the process of decolonization progressed, the membership of the United Nations increased. original 51 members. So the new countries were all developing countries, new members. So their priorities were different from the one originally enshrined or envisaged at the time of the establishment of the United Nations. So their priorities were development, education, health. Consequently, they, due to their effort, a new international economic order was agreed to at the United Nations in 1973. But because of many issues, which I can't dilate upon here, including many problems and faults of the developing countries themselves, that new international economic order did not make much progress. But efforts continued and still continue to meet the demands of the developing world. And we have the 8 Millennium Development Goals, followed by now 17 Sustainable Development Goals, all aimed at having a more equitable international order in this world, But unfortunately, those efforts have been now stymied by an environment which is vitiated by now unilateralism, COVID, regional conflicts, all resulting in and big power contestation, resulting in greater debt problem of the developing countries, among others. On the security side, Ukraine conflict, not to speak of the lingering disputes or the problems of Kashmir, Palestine, the provocative actions in Taiwan, and so on, leading to the emergence of security, these groupings, Quad, AUKUS. So the atmosphere has been really vitiated to a very large extent. And in this situation comes the initiative of China, an alternate course of action which the world should adopt. And that is the GDI, Global Development Initiative, launched by President Xi at the 76th UN General Assembly session in 2021. No, what is this initiative? As we have now know from what the speakers have told us in detail, that development, not war, contestation, containment, but development should be at the center of all human effort. That is the thrust of GDI. And already as explained that there are 6 principles underlying this initiative, 8 priority areas. I can't go into detail at this time. But that gist is that problems of development can be solved by development. That is the message of this GDI. But of course, how to achieve that? It is that there should be a policy formulation through participatory process, a consultation, and then there should be joint contribution by financial assistance, by sharing of experiences, and then the outcome should be shared equitably. Now, this is the philosophy of GDI, and not surprisingly that this initiative has received overwhelming support in the world. More than 100 countries already have become part of the Friends of GDI group. So in fact, this is, as was rightly pointed out, a part of the trilogy of Chinese initiatives. That is Global Security Initiative, Global Civilization Initiatives, and this now Global Economic development initiative, you know. So all these initiatives, they reinforce each other. And the purpose is to usher in a world which is peaceful, which is secure, which is prosperous, which is harmonious. And I think happily this GDI has now reached implementation stage. It's already has been launched, and hopefully it will meet the interests of the not only the developing world, but the world as a whole, including Pakistan. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we come to the end of today's event. I would like to thank all the participants who have spared this time and came here. And special thanks to Senator Shahid Hussain Syed for giving us time for a wonderful speech that he made. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Now we have refreshments at the back. Thank you.